for me, CrossFit is that high intensity exercise. And I believe pushing my lungs to work and pushing their capability has just made a huge difference. My last scans, my oncologist remarked that if he didn't know that part of my right lung was missing, he wouldn't be able to tell it from the scans.
Wow.
Because I've been able to, they don't regenerate like other parts of the body, but they do expand. So I've been able to expand that lung to match the other one. And he said if he didn't know it had been removed, he wouldn't be able to tell.
Hello, and welcome to Pursuing Health. I'm Dr. Julie Fouché, family physician and former CrossFit Games athlete. Here, I bring you information and inspiration to help bridge the gap between fitness and medicine and support your journey toward your healthiest self. This episode is one of a series of Pursuing Health stories. Here, I feature the inspiring stories of regular, everyday people who've used lifestyle to overcome some incredible health challenges. In this week's episode, I talk with Sharon Cabe, who shares her story of an unexpected colon cancer diagnosis at the young age of 43. She began an 8-year journey of chemotherapy and multiple surgeries to remove nodes in her lungs after learning the cancer had become metastatic. And just a few weeks after her final chemotherapy treatment, Sharon decided to try CrossFit because she'd read a study about how exercise could reduce colon cancer cell growth. It's now been over 5 years since starting CrossFit, and Sharon is cancer-free and hasn't looked back once. I love talking with Sharon about how CrossFit has helped to improve her physical strength and her lung capacity, relieve the constant stress she feels from fear of a recurrence, and maintain an overall positive attitude. It's amazing to see how Sharon really took her health into her own hands. She's thriving now, and she credits her attitude and active lifestyle, as well as, above all, her faith, with helping her remain as healthy as possible. Before we dive into the episode, I do want to make it clear that this podcast is for general information only and does not provide medical advice. I recommend that you seek assistance from your personal physician for any health conditions or concerns. Welcome to Pursuing Health. I'm really excited to be here with Sharon Cabe, who has an incredible story of healing with colon cancer and using CrossFit as well. And so I'm excited to sit down with you and talk about your whole journey, because as you said right before we started, it's been a long journey.
It has.
Yeah. So maybe we can start off sort of at the beginning. Can you give us just an idea of who you are and what your life and health was like before you had any diagnosis or any thought about colon cancer?
Well, I was relatively active. I used to play tennis, walked, ran, kept up with 2 teenage boys that played every single sport.
Oh boy.
Did aerobics back in the day. Our vacations were always centered around activity, usually snow skiing. I've been married for 38 years. I've got 2 grown kids.
Aww.
My first grandson, who's the light of my life.
Oh, congratulations.
So, that was my life before. Busy, normal, I guess you'd call it.
Busy, normal, active.
Right.
And then tell us like how you knew something was going on or when everything changed for you.
Well, I had always had intestinal issues. I attributed it to like spastic colon or gallbladder or nerves or just the busyness of life. I just always thought, I'm 35 years old. It can't be anything serious.
Sure. I
would have these bouts of fever, chills, terrible stomach pains. They'd last a day or 2. I never knew what they were. Talked to my GP, and he said it sounded kind of gynecological to him.
Okay.
So I talked to my gynecologist, and he was more like, what might have to do with your thyroid? I mean, we were talking, throwing things around, but really never looking back, I know I should have pushed for some type of testing, but at the time I didn't. I figured, it can't be anything serious.
Right. You're active. You're otherwise healthy.
Right.
Wow. So how long had that been going on before you started to
I would
know what was
say
happening?
finally, after about 7 or 8 years of these on and off symptoms, I did start having blood in my stool. And so that
okay.
was kind of my first, wow, this might be serious, but I really think it's hemorrhoids. So that is what took me to the doctor for the first time.
Okay. Okay. And then what did they find there?
Well, I got to that doctor who was also a friend and also a surgeon. And he said, Sharon, I don't see any sign of hemorrhoids. He said, I think we need to do a colonoscopy.
Okay.
So that was what got me to that point. And then when I was still, that was January of 2006, when I was still under sedation, pretty much, barely awake, he said, I could not complete your colonoscopy. And I was like, why? Which I had no idea. And he said, there was such a large mass in your colon, I couldn't go any further.
Wow.
And that, like I said, I was under the influence of the drugs. And so I really didn't even know how to respond to that. I was just okay, you know. When they gave me coffee and when I finally started coming around a little bit, I understood, oh, this is serious. We need to do something about it. So since he was a surgeon, we immediately just went next door to the hospital and he removed it within hours of finding it. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's fast. That's a lot of information to take in from going from, being healthy and active to all of a sudden finding out you have a mass and then having it removed. Wow.
It was a shock to everyone.
I can imagine. And you were what age when you were first diagnosed?
I had just turned 43.
Okay. So very young. And then take us through what the next sort of time period was like. What happened after the surgery? What did you find out? What was your treatment like?
Well, we still thought maybe it was just some type of mass. I mean, we had no idea. We had nothing to go on. I have no history of colon cancer. He did pathology. You're in the hospital, of course, for a couple of days, and pathology did come back that it was colon cancer. Since then, my brother has found out he also had colon cancer, had his removed, and he has not had any further trouble. But now you can see that it is in the family.
But no one before in previous generations that has ever had it. Wow.
Exactly. Nobody. So the doctor thought he got all the cancer, that it hadn't spread beyond the colon wall. They did a few lymph nodes and they were all negative. So he said, I feel I got good margins. I feel very good about it. But he said, I'm going to go ahead and send you to an oncologist just to get his opinion. So that was probably the scariest meeting because it's just so uncertain. They found out you've got cancer. It's just, it's very scary. So I finally just had to ask him, what would you do if I were your wife? And he said, I would do 6 months of chemo just to make sure you've got rid of all the cells. So that's what I did. I ended up doing 12 months because I was part of a study that they were doing at the hospital. So I ended up doing 12 months and thought, wow, that was long and that was hard. Lost the hair, the whole, the whole 9 yards of chemo. But I thought, well, that was a blip in my life and it's over. My uncle is a radiologist, so scans became a normal part of my routine. And by December of 2007, we were watching a small node in one of my lungs, just a tiny, tiny little spot. And of course, we were like, hey, 80% of people probably have spots in their lungs. I'm sure it's nothing. But in a year, it grew super, super, super slow. But in 6 months or so, we saw growth. In a year, we compared to the past year, saw growth. Finally decided we better have it biopsied. So we did, and it was colon cancer.
Wow.
So now I had metastatic colon cancer, which means it had spread to another part of the body. At this point, the doctors here sent me to Baylor in Dallas, and I became their patient at that point.
Wow. So that's a lot. Can you describe it all? what it was like during that year when you were on chemo. You went from being, sounds like, extremely active. Were you able to still keep up any activity or exercise during that time, or were you pretty much too exhausted to do much?
I tried really hard, and I walked a lot. I think that's probably the only thing. When I felt really bad, in my opinion, sunshine and walking, those were my two. They could get me out of the deepest, the deepest hole like I felt like I was in.
Yeah.
And that's really, really helped many times.
Yeah. Sunshine and being outside and walking, those are great medicines.
For sure.
Wow. Okay. So you get past that point, you find out now you have this spot in your lung and you have metastatic colon cancer. So, and also you like you said, you started having these regular scans, and I imagine, you're reassured in the fact that you've completed chemo and you have, no signs of cancer at that point when you had completed chemo, but there also has to be so much stress and anxiety every time you come for a new scan or wondering if it's come back. So
for sure.
Yeah.
I have scan anxiety really, really bad.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's been 16 years. I'm starting my 16th year of metastatic colon cancer. And I'd like to say I'm better at not having such anxiety on the scans, but I'm not sure I could say that and be honest. It's just scary. But salmon's made me feel a whole lot better. My lowest point was in locally here, where they didn't have experience with this particular cancer. And when a doctor tells you, I've never seen this before, there's literally nothing scarier. Yeah. I mean, I was petrified. But when I got to Salmons, which they've got a much larger pool of people that they've been dealing with for years, they said it was very common. At the time, by the time I got down there, I think another spot had popped up. I had one in each lung. And so I did what was new at the time, and it was called a stereotactic radiosurgery, or SRS. Okay. And I had quite a few spots treated in this way. You treat them and then you wait, basically, and just keep on getting your scans and make sure that they've had some effect. And I think I had 4 treated in this way altogether. The SRS, though, it targets the tumor, but then it kind of spreads out from the tumor location. Okay. So you're damaging more of your tissue.
Oh, your healthy lung.
Right. So, it's not the greatest, but it was still targeted. So that helps. After a while, some of them were not dying off like they should have. So I had to have 2 lung resections, one on each side.
Wow. That's a big surgery.
Those were big. Those were big. The drains that have to stay in your lungs afterwards are they're painful. They're very painful. After I had those removed, we did another round of really strong chemo to try to nip it again. And that was so strong, it landed me in the hospital. So I could not keep taking that. Wow. By 2014, the doctor found that in my upper lobe of the right lung, I kept having occurrences. So he suggested we just take out the upper lobe. Okay. So I had that surgery.
Wow.
That was a big one.
That's a big one. How much of your lungs did you end up having removed overall?
Well, the way I understand it, and you know more about this than I do, the left, I think, has 2 lobes, but the right has 3. Is that right? And I think they took the upper, just the upper lobe of the right lung. I think that's right.
Okay.
So I definitely could tell a difference on this. On the little sections they did after I healed, I couldn't tell a huge difference, but after removing part of my lung, I definitely could tell a difference.
Whole lobe, yeah, that's a big difference. Wow. Okay.
They gave me Avastin, which is another chemo, for a year following that surgery. It required us going to Dallas every 3 weeks for a year to get that chemo. And that seemed to have gotten it. That chemo ended in December of 2015. And 2 weeks later, I started CrossFit.
Wow. Wow. Well, I want to get that story about what led you to CrossFit, but let's just start there. I mean, 2 weeks later, so you obviously had been introduced to it or thinking about it beforehand. How did you first hear about CrossFit, and then why was it something that you decided you wanted to do?
Well, I first heard about it from my son, Clayton, who is a level 3 CrossFit trainer.
Oh, good for him.
He works at The Hill in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay.
And he had been trying to get us to go for years and years. I'd watched the CrossFit Games with him. He cared about it. So therefore, as the mom, I cared about it. But I cared about it for him. And so we went to regionals. We went to the games. I tried to care about it for his sake, while also telling him, there's no way your dad and I can do that. We are too old. There's no way.
Yeah.
But finally, our local CrossFit 413 here in Fort Smith, we heard my husband was friends with the owner, and they were going to start what they called a boot camp.
Okay.
And it was for beginners.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, if I'm ever going to try it, this would be the time, because they're taking people that they know have never done it before, and they're going to start really slow with this. So if we're going to do it, we've got to do it now.
Do it now. Yeah.
So that's what got us started.
Wow. And the timing sounds like it was really perfect with you sort of finishing your chemo and moving forward.
It was.
And so what was that like then, starting CrossFit? I imagine that after just finishing chemo, also, your body is probably pretty run down. What was it like in the initial experiences with CrossFit? And then what kind of improvements did you start to see in your health?
Well, they kind of tried to see where we were at our first night. And they said, let's time you and see how long you can hold yourself up in a plank. I couldn't hold myself up in a plank. My arms could not support my body weight in a plank. Yeah. They said, let's let you hang from a bar and see how long you can hang from a bar. Obviously, I'd had so much surgery in this area that I couldn't hardly hang from a bar. But the place that it was the worst was, let's do some line drills. Let's run down here with a med ball and run back. No running. I mean, with part of my lung gone, and then the rest of them basically riddled with scar tissue. And for that number of years, I hadn't been pushing it. It was hard. It was hard, but I was so glad I stuck with it.
What made you stick with it?
Probably feeling better, just feeling better. There was a release every time I went, the endorphins start kicking in, and you're like, wow, this feels really good. And just the release of tension. I would go on the weeks that I was going to have a scan, and I realized, wow, I haven't just gotten myself all worked up this week. I mean, because I've been working out. And so it really helped with nerves and anxiety and all of that.
That's amazing.
I think just my friends too, they're meeting friends and them being, hey, are you going to be there today? Holding each other accountable. That really helped also.
That helps a ton. Did you start to notice improvements then in your breathing and in your strength?
For sure. We're starting our 6th year CrossFit now. And in those years, I've only had one reoccurrence of a tiny little spot in 2017. And I was able to get the latest technology now, which is called proton therapy, which is very targeted. And unlike the other radiation I'd had before, this works in. it doesn't work out, it works in. So it does minimal damage to the surrounding tissue. And it cleared it up in only 5 treatments. And it's been gone for good. I still get scans every 4 months, and I've had clean scans for 3 years now.
Good for you.
I just attribute a lot of that to working out.
Yeah.
And stretching my lungs. I don't know if you wanted me to mention the Science Daily.
Yes, please do. Please do. I think that's great. And we can link to it as well.
Okay. Well, I read everything I can find about colon cancer and survival, obviously. So in Science Daily, they had a article called Colon Cancer Growth Reduced by Exercise. And in summary, it just found, and I'll read their summary. It says, exercise may play a role in reducing the growth of colon cancer cells, according to new research. The study found that after a short session of high-intensity interval training, growth of colon cancer cells was reduced, and that also increased indicators of inflammation. So for me, CrossFit is that high-intensity exercise, and I believe pushing my lungs to work and pushing their capability has just made a huge difference. My last scans, my oncologist remarked that if he didn't know that part of my right lung was missing, he wouldn't be able to tell it from the scans. Because I've been able to, they don't regenerate like other parts of the body, but they do expand. So I've been able to expand that lung to match the other one. And he said if he didn't know it had been removed, he wouldn't be able to tell.
Wow, that's incredible.
So that was exciting.
That's really exciting. Oh my gosh. And congratulations. Good for you. 3 years with nothing on your scans has to be just give you a lot of happiness and peace, I would think.
It does. It's very exciting. I've been very, very thankful.
It's amazing. Any big accomplishments in CrossFit, things that you thought you never would be able to do that you've been able to learn or do or accomplish in the 6 years you've been doing CrossFit?
Well, I entered, what is the competition called? I'm trying to think.
The Open?
That anybody can do.
The Open, the CrossFit Games Open?
Well, I've done the Open a few times, but it's also this little local competition that I entered. The name has left me, but anyway.
Oh, okay.
I entered it and I thought I would never, ever, ever compete.
Yeah.
But this is called I wish I could think of it. It's called it's for everyone. It's a competition for everyone. They just do little local. And I was in a competition and I was standing there on the competition floor having my name called out thinking, what is happening right now?
Oh, that's so awesome.
But I'm still not the fastest and I'm never going to be the best or the strongest, but I've made a lot of strides and I just love it. That's
amazing. I bet your son is very proud of you.
He is.
So you've obviously had, a long journey, like you said. Even after that first year, you thought, okay, we're in the clear here. And then you've had many more obstacles that have come up since then. What have been some of the things that you think helped you the most to always have a positive mindset and to be able to have such resilience with everything that you've faced?
To help me have a positive mindset, I probably have to just remember to start each day with prayer. That's number one, prayer and devotion time. I've claimed a verse as my own to remind me of hope. And it's Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And I would say that probably keeps me going more than anything else.
I love that. That's amazing. I want to ask 3 questions that I ask everyone at the end of the podcast. The first one is, what are the 3 things that you do now that have the biggest positive impact on your health?
Well, like I said, I start every day with prayer and usually some type of devotion.
Okay.
I plan our CrossFit workout for the day because when COVID started, our gym closed, like everyone's. So we started working out at home, and we discovered we really enjoyed it. So we built a home gym. We have pull-up rigs out beside the house. And so now I usually, with the help of some really great online coaches, I plan our workouts for each day, and we do our workouts when my husband gets home from work. We usually have friends join us, which is awesome too.
Oh, that's great.
And so I enjoy doing that. And then third is probably watch what I'm eating. I think about what I'm eating now, which that when I was 35 and first started this, I never gave it a second thought. But now I think about everything I eat.
What are some of the ways that you've changed how you eat since then?
Probably the first thing I did was drink a lot more water, no sodas, low in sugar, which is super hard to do. And I'm not really that great at it.
It sneaks into everything.
It is. It's probably my one big thing that I need to work on more than anything else. But our diet did change during the time that I was in chemo. Even it had to change. We started having what we called Thursday night steak nights, cooked in an iron skillet to bring my iron levels up so that I wouldn't have to have supplemental infusions. So just a lot of things you can change with food.
Absolutely. And that maybe answers my next question, which is, what's one thing that you're working on, or one thing that you think would have a big impact on your health, but you haven't implemented it yet? So maybe that's something I think we're always, all of us, we're always constantly working on improving.
Definitely lower sugar in my diet would be something I'm constantly working on.
Yeah. My last question is, what does a healthy life look like to you?
To me, a healthy life would be, like we've talked about, thinking about what you eat, less additives, preservatives, fast food, just better eating, just thinking about what you're putting into your body. Exercising every day, definitely, and having a quiet time with the Lord every day, I believe, makes a big difference.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. What would be some advice or something, a message that you would want to pass on to others who are facing maybe a situation that seems scary or unexpected, or don't know how long the road is ahead? What would you tell them? Or if you could go back and tell yourself something, when you were 35 or 43, what would you say?
Well, probably a big lesson I learned was to not just keep yourself so busy that you don't realize that life is going on around you, and that you're here for a purpose. And you just get so busy that you can't you just miss the little things that are happening. If you're facing something really tough, stop, slow down, talk to the Lord about it, realize all these small things that are going on around you, and taking your mind off of your own problems and helping others. That has helped me countless times. When I would get so down and depressed and think, what am I going to do? What am I going to do from here? And just take my eyes off of myself for a few minutes and put them on someone else. It helps.
It helps, gives a lot of perspective and changes that focus.
Definitely.
That's great. That's wonderful. Well, I so appreciate you sharing your story and your experience here. And I think it's amazing to hear how you went from, going to the CrossFit Games with your son and saying, there's no way I'll ever be able to do that, to now writing workouts every day for you and your husband and your friends and working out at home, and that it seems like it's become such a big and consistent part of your life and seems to have had a big impact just on your overall health and well-being. So thank you for sharing, and maybe someone listening who's afraid to give it a shot will now think about it and consider giving CrossFit a try.
I hope so.
And I know you said you'd love to connect with other long-term metastatic colon cancer survivors. I know, maybe people listening don't realize what a huge thing this is, being diagnosed with metastatic colon cancer and then being cancer-free for as long as you have and being so healthy. It's not common and it's not guaranteed. And so, anyone else who's listening who wants to connect or reach out, how would they be able to reach you?
I'm on Facebook. If we could connect that way, that'd be great. They can just look up my name on Facebook. That'd probably be the easiest way.
That's perfect. And we can link to your Facebook on the show notes as well, so people can find you or other cancer CrossFitters, you said. So anyone else who wants to connect will be able to find you on Facebook. So
that'd be awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to share or anything else that we missed?
Probably the only thing that I would like to say is that we talked a lot about what I felt like and what I did after I had colon cancer, but I want people to know that you don't ever have to have colon cancer. That if you'll get your colonoscopies and they get those polyps removed early, it's 100% preventable. No one ever has to get colon cancer. So
well,
that's
great
a big
point.
plug.
And great message to end on, because the number of people I talk to who a colonoscopy sounds like a big ordeal. And I've actually had one myself, and it's not, it's not something you have to take time. You have to plan for it. And it's not the most pleasant thing, but it's also, better to be preventive and make sure. So great message to end on. And hopefully everybody listening will talk to their doctor and get their regular colon cancer screening. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you or someone you know has a story to share on a future episode of Pursuing Health, please write me at info@pursuing-health.com. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, please also consider subscribing and giving it a 5-star rating on iTunes. It really does help to get the word out to more people.